Have you ever felt like your body is changing in ways you didn't expect? Aging is an inevitable part of life. Yet it can leave us feeling uncertain or even disconnected from those we love. In today's discussion, we'll explore the emotional journey of intimacy as we age, the physical transformations that accompany it, and how to rediscover deeper, more meaningful connections. Stay with us until the end to learn how aging can be embraced with grace and how intimacy can evolve into something more profound over time. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. Your support means the world to us. So if you find value in this video, please give it a thumbs up to help spread our message. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on today's topic. If you find the content helpful, please comment with a 1, if it doesn't resonate, leave a 0. Your feedback helps us create better videos tailored to your interests. Now, let's begin. My name is Eleanor Grant. As I sit here reflecting on the decades that have shaped me, I am struck by the depth and richness of my life. Every wrinkle on my face, every silver strand of hair, tells a story of triumphs, heartaches, laughter, and most importantly, the wisdom that comes with growing older. Having lived through countless phases of life, from the exuberance of youth to the quiet contemplation of old age, I feel compelled to discuss something that isn't often talked about openly. It's a topic that many find uncomfortable. Yet it affects countless men and couples as they age. I want to address the natural process of changes in the male body. Specifically, the reduction in physical function that comes with time. I understand this might be an awkward subject for some. But from the bottom of my heart, I believe it's essential to talk about it openly. Aging, in all its complexity, is not something to fear. It's a journey that can be embraced with grace and dignity if we learn to face the changes head-on. Aging does not diminish our worth, in fact. It deepens the beauty of our experiences. Just as our skin wrinkles, our hair grays, and our joints stiffen, the male body undergoes its own transformations. I vividly recall the days of my youth, when intimacy seemed inseparable from the vitality of our bodies. When I first met the man who would become my husband, Oliver, I was captivated by his energy, his confidence, and yes, by the physical passion we shared. He was strong, self-assured, and in those early days, our intimate life was fiery and exhilarating. We couldn't keep our hands off each other, and every touch felt like it could set the world on fire. It was a time of exploration, where every embrace was charged with the electricity of youth. Our love felt invincible, and intimacy was closely tied to the physical connection we shared. But as life moved forward, so did we. Our once strong bodies began to show signs of wear. Oliver, always so full of vitality, started noticing changes in his body that neither of us had anticipated. The first sign was a decline in his physical performance. At first, it was easy to dismiss as something temporary, something that would resolve itself with time. But the truth was, this marked the beginning of a new chapter, one we hadn't prepared for. His performance became less consistent, less reliable, and sometimes, before we could even fully enjoy the closeness, it would falter altogether. It was as if his body was betraying him. And I could see the frustration in his eyes, the silent disappointment he carried with him. In those moments, my heart ached for him. As his wife, I wanted to be there for him in every way, not just physically, but emotionally as well. I understood that this change was affecting more than just our physical connection, it was challenging his confidence. His sense of self. I knew that in order for us to navigate this new phase of life together, we had to confront these changes openly. We couldn't ignore what was happening or pretend that it didn't matter. Instead, we needed to redefine what intimacy meant for us. It wasn't just about physical acts anymore, it was about emotional closeness, mutual respect, and finding joy in the quiet, tender moments we shared. Through patience and open communication, we began to rediscover intimacy in a new way, a way that was less about performance and more about connection. We learned to find comfort in simply being together, holding hands, sharing a laugh, or lying side by side in the quiet of the evening. Those moments, though simple, carried a profound depth that we had overlooked in our younger years. Aging may bring physical changes, but it also offers an opportunity to grow closer, to deepen the bond that has been built over years of shared experiences. By embracing the changes rather than fearing them, Oliver and I found a new kind of intimacy, one that was richer, more meaningful, and more enduring than the fiery passion of youth. And so, to anyone facing similar changes, I want to say this: you are not alone. These changes do not diminish your value or your ability to love and be loved. Aging is not the end of intimacy, it is the beginning of a deeper, more profound connection, one that goes beyond the physical and touches the very essence of who we are as partners. Embrace it. Talk about it. And remember that love, in all its forms, only grows stronger with time. His self-confidence had started to erode. And with it, his sense of masculinity. I noticed the subtle shifts in how he carried himself, especially during those quiet moments when he thought I wasn't looking. But deep down, I knew something important: intimacy doesn't disappear with age, it simply transforms. We were no longer the youthful couple we had once been in our 30s. But that didn't mean our connection had to fade. Instead, our love evolved beyond the physical, becoming something rooted in trust, understanding, and a bond that extended far beyond mere appearances. We began to redefine what intimacy meant for us. It was no longer about physical performance or the expectation of maintaining youthful vigor. Intimacy became something deeper, something more enduring. It was found in the quiet moments we shared, lying next to each other, feeling the warmth of our bodies, breathing in unison, and finding comfort in the simple act of being together. We found joy in tender kisses, gentle touches, and the memories that filled the spaces between words. These moments carried a kind of intimacy that our younger selves never had the wisdom to fully appreciate. In our later years, love took on a new meaning. It wasn't driven by fiery passion, but by tenderness and presence. It was less about physical desire and more about emotional connection. As we navigated these changes together, I learned one of the greatest truths of my life: real love isn't dependent on the physical. Yes, our bodies age. And yes, those changes can be difficult to accept. But these changes don't take away our ability to love deeply. In fact, if we embrace them, they can bring us closer than ever before. Of course, there were moments of frustration. There were days when I saw the sadness in his eyes, the weight of his changing body pressing heavily on his spirit. He didn't always voice his feelings, but I could sense his inner turmoil. Seeing someone you love struggle in silence is never easy. But we faced it together. We talked about it. And when words weren't enough, we found solace in laughter. Humor became our way of coping, a tool to lift the heaviness from moments that could have otherwise brought us down. Acceptance played a vital role in keeping us strong. It was this mutual acceptance, of ourselves, of each other, and of the inevitable changes, that allowed us to continue building on the foundation of love we had established over the years. We refused to let these physical changes define us or our relationship. Instead, we chose to focus on what truly mattered, the life we had created, the memories we cherished, and the future that still lay ahead. To anyone facing similar challenges, I want you to know that you are not alone. These changes do not diminish your value or your ability to give and receive love. Aging doesn't mark the end of intimacy, rather. It signals the beginning of a new kind of closeness, one that is richer, deeper, and more meaningful than the fleeting desires of youth. Embrace it. Talk about it. Don't shy away from the changes. Because love, in all its forms, grows stronger when nurtured with openness and honesty. It was around this time that I noticed something else, something I hadn't anticipated. The man who had always been so sure of himself, who had carried himself with pride and strength, began to withdraw. His once vibrant confidence seemed to waver, and he grew more reserved, especially when it came to intimacy. The playful touches and affectionate gestures that had once come so naturally began to fade. Our bedroom, which had always been a place of connection and warmth, started to feel weighed down by unspoken worries and hesitation. Initially, I didn't give much thought to the changes in his body. I assumed it was simply part of the natural aging process, something we would both have to accept. But as time passed, I began to see how deeply these changes affected him. He had always taken pride in his strength, in his ability to provide comfort and connection. Now, he seemed to be retreating into himself, building an emotional barrier that I hadn't seen before. I realized then that this wasn't just about physical changes, it was about identity. The man who had always been so strong and self-assured was now grappling with something he hadn't prepared for. He was facing a loss of the vitality that had once been central to how he saw himself. And it was affecting his confidence in ways neither of us had anticipated. Slowly, intimacy became a subject he avoided. And the distance that grew between us was something I couldn't ignore. One evening, I decided it was time to confront the issue, not with criticism or frustration, but with love. I could see that he needed reassurance, a reminder that he wasn't facing these changes alone. I decided to bring up the topic gently, aware of Victor's unease but knowing that ignoring the issue wouldn't help either of us. The moment I mentioned it, the change in his expression revealed everything. His eyes, once brimming with confidence and warmth, now reflected a mixture of uncertainty and shame. My heart ached for him. This was a man who had weathered countless storms in life with unwavering strength. Yet now he was struggling with something beyond his control, a loss he didn't know how to process. He was embarrassed. And that growing sense of embarrassment was quietly eroding the closeness we had built over the years. Victor had always been proud of his ability to connect with me both emotionally and physically. The idea that his body was now betraying him was crushing. Not just because of the changes themselves but because of what they symbolized to him. He felt as though he was losing a part of his identity. As if his worth was tied entirely to his ability to be the man he once was. It was painful to witness. In my eyes, none of it mattered. His value was never defined by his physical abilities, but rather by the love, devotion, and companionship we had shared for decades. I couldn't stand by and watch him suffer in silence. I knew something had to be done, determined to help him understand that he wasn't alone in this. I spent hours reading about the changes men experience as they age. I wanted to find the answers that might ease his mind and give us both clarity. What I discovered was enlightening: the shrinking of certain parts of the body, including the penis, is entirely normal as men grow older. It results from a combination of factors such as reduced elasticity in the skin, decreased blood flow, and hormonal shifts. Nothing about it was unusual. Nor did it signify the end of intimacy or joy. When I shared what I had learned with Victor, I saw a flicker of relief in his eyes. He listened carefully. But I knew that simply understanding the science wasn't enough to lift the emotional burden he carried. The real challenge lay in accepting this new reality and finding a way forward together. As we talked through it, we began to realize that this wasn't an end, it was the start of a new chapter in our relationship. Yes, the physical changes were real. But they didn't have to diminish the connection we shared. Instead, they opened the door to something even deeper. A kind of closeness that transcended the physical and was rooted in emotional and spiritual connection. With this newfound perspective, we started to navigate our relationship differently. Intimacy became less about performance and more about simply being present with one another. We began to appreciate the quiet moments, holding hands while lying in bed, exchanging tender kisses without the pressure of expectation, and finding joy in just being together. These moments, though simple, carried immense meaning. They reminded us that intimacy isn't solely about physical acts but about the bond we had cultivated over a lifetime. Our emotional connection, which had always been the foundation of our relationship, grew even stronger. We learned to communicate in ways that transcended words. In ways only decades of shared life could teach. Victor no longer felt the need to prove anything. And I stopped worrying about things we couldn't control. Instead, we chose to focus on the beauty of what we had built together, a relationship defined by love, trust, and mutual respect. I share this part of our story because I believe it's a conversation that more people need to have. As a society, we place far too much emphasis on youth, physical appearance, and performance. We forget that aging brings its own kind of beauty and depth, one that can't be found in the fleeting moments of youth. Growing older doesn't mean the end of love or passion, it's an invitation to rediscover what truly matters. Through this journey, Victor and I have reached a place of acceptance. He no longer feels burdened by the need to live up to unrealistic expectations. And I no longer fret about what we can't change. Instead, we've learned to focus on the richness of what we still have. Together, we've embraced this new stage of life with grace, finding joy in the quiet moments and meaning in the connection that has only grown deeper with time. Aging may have changed our bodies, but it hasn't taken away what makes us who we are. If anything, it has allowed us to see each other more clearly, to appreciate each other more fully, and to love each other more deeply. To anyone facing similar changes, I want to say this: you are not alone. These changes don't define you, they're simply another chapter in the story of your life. Embrace them. Talk openly about them. And remember that love, in all its forms, only grows stronger when nurtured with honesty and care. Throughout the years, we had shared a life filled with countless ups and downs. And these recent changes were simply another chapter in that ongoing journey. What we came to understand, slowly but profoundly, was that real love isn't defined by youthful vitality or perfect appearances. Instead, it's about standing by each other through every phase, every shift, and every challenge that life presents. For anyone facing something similar, I want to assure you, you are not alone. The changes that come with aging are entirely natural. And they don't have to strip away the joy or satisfaction of intimacy. In fact, if approached with openness and acceptance, They can deepen your connection in ways you never imagined. Embrace the changes. Talk about them honestly with your partner. Always remember that love is so much more than the physical, it's about trust, emotional closeness, and the shared history that ties you together. Aging, with all its complexities, can indeed be beautiful if we allow ourselves to view it through a lens of appreciation rather than fear. One quiet evening, after finishing dinner, we sat together in the living room. The warm glow of the lamp cast a soft light on Victor's face. And I knew it was finally time to address what had been weighing on both of us. For too long, an unspoken tension had lingered between us, creating a quiet distance that neither of us had openly acknowledged but both had undeniably felt. My heart felt heavy because I understood exactly what had caused it. Victor, the strong and proud man I had loved for more than 4 decades, was silently grappling with a change in his body that had shaken his confidence deeply. Taking a deep breath, I reached for his hand and gently said, "We need to talk." I didn't want to push him, but I needed him to know that I saw him, that I understood, and that he didn't have to carry this alone. "I know you've been feeling different," I said softly, squeezing his hand for reassurance. "And I want you to know that it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. And certainly nothing to be ashamed of." As I spoke, I saw the tension in his shoulders begin to ease. The unspoken fear, the quiet embarrassment that had been weighing on him, was finally being brought into the open. And for both of us, that felt like a relief. I went on to explain that aging brings inevitable changes to all of us, changes that are completely normal and nothing to fear. "We're both growing older," I said with a soft smile. "And there's no shame in that. What matters isn't how our bodies change, but the love and connection we've built over a lifetime." I wanted him to truly understand that my love for him hadn't diminished in the slightest because of these changes. In fact, if anything, I loved him more now than ever before. Because of everything we had been through together, the life we had created side by side, the challenges we had overcome, and the countless memories we had shared. The fact that his body was different now didn't change what mattered most to me: his heart, his kindness, and the way he always made me feel safe and cherished. In that moment, something shifted between us. It felt as though we had finally released ourselves from the invisible burden of unrealistic expectations. We realized that intimacy, true intimacy, wasn't about physical performance at all. It was about emotional connection, about presence, and about simply being there for each other. For the first time in a long while, we both felt free from the pressures society places on men. Free from the quiet insecurities that had crept into our relationship. And free to explore a new kind of closeness that wasn't tied to youthful physicality but rooted in something much deeper. As we moved forward, we discovered a different kind of intimacy, one that wasn't centered around the need for an erection or the pursuit of climax. Instead, we found ourselves savoring the quiet moments we had once taken for granted. Long, slow kisses became more meaningful than any hurried encounter of our younger years. Simply holding hands in bed, feeling the warmth of each other's presence, brought us a kind of closeness that was intimate in ways we had never fully appreciated before. One of the most beautiful realizations we had during this time was that pleasure didn't need to be dependent on physical performance. We began to explore new ways of connecting, ones that weren't tied to conventional notions of sex. We spent more time in foreplay, savoring the experience without rushing to any specific outcome. We learned to enjoy each other's bodies in ways that didn't necessarily lead to intercourse. And in doing so, we deepened the emotional bond that had always been the cornerstone of our relationship. What had once been a source of anxiety and frustration became, instead, an opportunity to connect in a way that was more meaningful and profound than anything we had known before. By letting go of societal expectations and embracing the changes together, we found that intimacy didn't have to fade with age. Rather, it evolved into something richer. Something that brought us closer than ever. Over time, as we navigated this new phase of our relationship, something remarkable happened. Slowly but surely, I noticed a change in Victor. His confidence, which had taken a hit, began to rebuild itself. He wasn't the same man he had been in his youth. But that was perfectly fine. He no longer felt the need to measure his worth by his physical performance. Instead, he started to accept his body for what it was, embracing its changes and imperfections. With that acceptance came a profound sense of peace, peace with himself, peace with the inevitable passage of time, and peace with the new chapter we were entering together as a couple. Contrary to what we once feared, our intimate life didn't diminish. In fact, it became more fulfilling than it had ever been. By shedding the burden of physical expectations, we could focus on what truly mattered: our connection, our love, and the sheer pleasure of being together. We learned that intimacy, in its truest and most meaningful form, transcends the physical. It's about how you make your partner feel, how you communicate through the gentle language of touch and presence, and how you share the joy of simply existing in each other's company. One of the most profound lessons we took from this experience was that intimacy is not confined to what happens behind closed doors. It is present in every interaction. Every small gesture that might seem insignificant but ultimately shapes the fabric of our shared lives. Intimacy is in how we listen to each other without judgment, how we offer comfort during moments of sadness, and how we laugh together even when life throws us curveballs. True intimacy is about being fully present, not just when everything is going well, but especially during life's inevitable hardships. As time went on, we came to a deeper realization: love and intimacy are far more than mere physical attraction or sexual capability. They are about the profound emotional connection that strengthens with each passing year. Built on a foundation of trust and understanding that only decades of shared experiences can create. They are about standing by one another as you both change and age, and knowing that no matter what, you are loved for who you are, not for what your body can or cannot do. For anyone out there who might be facing similar changes, I want to offer this message of hope. Growing older doesn't mark the end of intimacy, rather, it signals the beginning of a deeper, richer kind of connection, one that surpasses anything you may have known in your youth. Embrace the changes. Accept your body for what it is. And always remember that love is about far more than physical appearances or abilities. It's about how you make each other feel, how you continue to show up for one another, and how you choose to grow together, even as your bodies evolve. In the end, what truly matters is the love you share, the tender moments, the quiet understanding, and the emotional bond that grows stronger over time. This is the essence of intimacy. And if nurtured, it only gets better as the years go by. Victor and I learned that the real beauty of love lies not in its ability to remain unchanged, but in its capacity to grow and adapt, to deepen and flourish even in the face of life's inevitable transformations. It's an unfortunate reality that, from a young age, men are conditioned to equate their value and masculinity with physical prowess, strength, stamina, and sexual performance. Society places immense pressure on men to uphold an image of unyielding virility, as though their worth as individuals hinges on the size of their bodies or their ability to perform in the bedroom. This expectation is not only unrealistic but deeply unfair. As the years go by, and those inevitable physical changes begin to manifest, many men find themselves grappling with feelings of inadequacy, embarrassment, and shame. But here's the truth I want every man to know: your worth has nothing to do with the size of your body, the firmness of your muscles, or any other physical trait that may change as you age. True worth lies in who you are as a person, in your capacity to love, to care, and to nurture meaningful connections with those around you. What Victor and I discovered through this journey was that love, at its core, isn't about maintaining an illusion of perfection. It's about being real, about being present, and about finding new ways to love and connect as you both evolve. Growing older taught us that intimacy isn't something that fades with time. Instead, it becomes something far more meaningful, a reflection of the trust, respect, and deep affection that have grown over years of standing by each other through life's ever-changing tides. True value lies in how you love, how you care, and how deeply you connect with the people who matter most. It's found in your capacity for empathy, kindness, strength of character, and the way you treat your partner with respect, affection, and tenderness. Having lived a long and fulfilling life beside Victor, I can say with certainty that intimacy in older age can be even more rewarding, satisfying, and meaningful than it ever was in youth. There's a unique beauty in growing older together, something that transcends the physicality of sex or the fleeting pleasures of youth. With maturity comes a depth of understanding, a patience, and a presence that's difficult to achieve when you're young and still caught up in the need to prove something. When Victor and I were younger, like many couples, we placed significant emphasis on the physical side of intimacy. Our love life was filled with passion, urgency, and a sense that every moment together needed to be exciting, new, and physically fulfilling. We, too, got caught up in the belief that the success of our intimate life depended on performance, stamina, and the pursuit of pleasure. While those early days were undeniably thrilling, I now understand that intimacy is about so much more than what happens in the bedroom. As we aged, and as Victor's body began to change, we had to confront the realities of growing older together. I remember the first time we noticed a decline in his erections. There was a quiet, undeniable tension between us, one we didn't immediately address. Victor was embarrassed and confused. And though he didn't voice it, I could tell he was beginning to feel like less of a man. For a time, he avoided the topic altogether, pretending it wasn't an issue. Yet, despite his silence, the growing emotional distance between us told a different story. It wasn't just about the physical changes. What truly troubled him was what those changes represented. He feared they would alter the way I saw him, that he was somehow becoming less in my eyes. I'll never forget the evening when we finally opened up about it. We had just finished dinner, and a quiet stillness filled the room. Sensing the weight of unspoken worries, I reached out, took his hand in mine, and sat down beside him. I gently told him that I understood what he was going through. I explained that the changes in his body didn't make him any less of a man, and they certainly didn't affect how much I loved him. What mattered to me wasn't the strength of his erection or his ability to perform like he did when we were younger. What truly mattered was the bond we shared, the love, trust, and connection we had nurtured over the years. In that moment, something shifted. We both began to see our relationship in a new light. We realized that intimacy wasn't about performance or living up to societal expectations. It wasn't about achieving a particular outcome or adhering to some outdated standard. Instead, true intimacy came from the emotional connection we had built over decades, the way we communicated, the way we touched and held each other, and the deep sense of comfort that came from truly knowing and being known by another person. With this newfound understanding, our love life transformed in ways we hadn't anticipated. We stopped focusing so much on the physical aspects of intimacy and began exploring new ways of connecting that went beyond sex. We learned to savor the quiet moments, holding hands as we lay together, sharing long conversations late into the night, or simply enjoying the feeling of each other's presence without any pressure or expectation. We discovered that intimacy didn't always have to lead to something physical. Sometimes it was simply about being together, fully present in the moment, appreciating the love we had built. Long, slow kisses took on a different kind of meaning, one that was deeper and more significant than anything we had experienced in our younger, hurried years. Holding hands in bed became just as intimate as any physical act we once shared. It was no longer about chasing after some ideal of youthful passion but about embracing a deeper, more meaningful connection. One of the most beautiful realizations we had during this time was that pleasure didn't need to be tied to performance. We found new ways to connect, ways that didn't rely on the physical intensity of youth but instead centered on emotional closeness and tenderness. We learned to take our time, to cherish each touch and each shared moment without worrying about where it might lead. What had once been a source of anxiety became an opportunity to grow closer in ways we hadn't imagined before. Together, simply touching one another's skin, sharing gentle kisses without any expectation of where they might lead, brought us a deeper kind of pleasure, one that wasn't tied to the physical act of intimacy but instead to the emotional connection that came from being fully present with each other. One of the most profound shifts we experienced during this time was in how we began to view our bodies. In our younger years, like many couples, we had been caught up in the pursuit of physical perfection. We admired toned muscles, smooth, youthful skin, and sought to meet society's unrealistic ideals of beauty. But as the years passed and wrinkles started to appear, we gradually came to see things differently. Our bodies were no longer just objects to be scrutinized by appearance, they were living vessels, carrying the stories of our lives, the experiences we had shared, and the lessons we had learned. Each of my wrinkles, each of Jack's scars, each physical change became a symbol of the life we had built together. Aging, we realized, didn't diminish our value, it deepened it. Our bodies had become living maps of the adventures we'd embarked on, the mistakes we'd made, and the moments we had grown through. Instead of viewing our aging bodies with disappointment, we chose gratitude. Every line, every mark, became a testament to our endurance, to our ability to love and grow together. Jack began to see himself differently too. Over time, he came to understand that his masculinity was not defined by the size of his body or the strength of his physical abilities. Those things were only a small part of who he was, parts that naturally evolved, just as many aspects of life do. But none of those changes had the power to lessen the man he had always been. As we continued to grow older together, something remarkable happened. Our intimate life didn't fade away, it transformed. By letting go of the pressure to meet arbitrary physical standards, we allowed ourselves to focus on what truly mattered, our emotional connection, the love we shared, and the joy of simply being together. We discovered that intimacy, in its truest form, is about so much more than the act itself. It's about making your partner feel cherished, creating a space for vulnerability, and nurturing a bond that grows stronger with time. Perhaps the most meaningful lesson we learned through this journey was that true intimacy transcends physicality. It's found in the way we treated each other with kindness, in the way we offered comfort during difficult times, and in the way we remained present for one another, especially when life's challenges arose. Intimacy was about showing up, not just in moments of joy, but in times of hardship, when our love was tested the most. At the end of the day, intimacy became about connection, the kind that touches the very essence of who we are. Growing older together turned out to be a profound gift. It taught us that love, in its most enduring form, isn't about youthful passion or flawless appearances. It's about standing by one another through life's inevitable changes and finding new ways to love, appreciate, and connect, no matter what stage we were in. As the years went by and physical changes continued to make themselves known, I witnessed a quiet yet powerful transformation in Jack, one that, even now, fills me with pride. Like many men, he had carried the unspoken burden of societal expectations for most of his life, the pressure to remain strong, virile, and sexually capable, as if his worth depended on it. This idea, ingrained in him from a young age, had shaped his understanding of manhood, tying it closely to fleeting qualities like physical strength and performance. When his body began to change, I noticed how it affected him deeply. He grew quieter, more reserved, especially when the topic of intimacy arose. Though he didn't say it outright, I could see the frustration in his eyes. His once natural confidence seemed to falter as he began to notice that things weren't the same as they had been in his youth. His body was changing, and he didn't know how to navigate those changes without feeling like he was losing a part of himself. Then, one quiet evening, Jack finally opened up to me. He admitted the fear he had been carrying silently, the fear that he was no longer the man he used to be. That these changes meant he was less worthy or less desirable. It was heartbreaking to hear, knowing how much pressure he had placed on himself to live up to an impossible standard. But that conversation became a turning point for us, a moment when we began to redefine what intimacy and masculinity meant in our relationship. I reassured Jack that his worth had never been tied to his physical abilities. What mattered to me was not his strength or stamina but the way he loved, the way he cared for me, and the life we had built together over the years. That realization allowed us to step into a new chapter of our relationship, one free from societal expectations and focused entirely on what brought us joy and connection. We learned to find pleasure in the little things, a shared laugh, a lingering touch, or simply lying side by side, enjoying each other's company, without the pressure of performance. We discovered a kind of closeness that was deeper and more meaningful than anything we had experienced before. Jack had long carried the burden of maintaining an image that had little to do with the deep love and connection we had nurtured over the years. But something remarkable happened as he began to let go of those outdated and unrealistic expectations. It was like witnessing a flower slowly bloom in the warmth of the sun. His confidence returned. But this time it was different, more grounded, more authentic, and unshakable. This newfound confidence was no longer tied to physical appearance or sexual performance, it stemmed from a place of inner peace and acceptance. Jack had come to understand that his worth wasn't tied to superficial standards, like the size of his body or his ability to perform as he once had. Instead, his true value lay in the way he loved, the way he cared for me, and the unwavering support he provided to our family throughout life's complexities. This inner transformation brought about a significant shift in our intimacy as well. Gone were the days when we felt pressured by physical expectations or a need to perform. Instead, we found a deeper, richer connection that transcended the mere act of sex. Though our physical encounters became less frequent, they were imbued with a newfound meaning. We discovered that intimacy wasn't solely about actions or achieving specific goals, it was about being present in the quiet moments. Those tender instances when we simply held each other, touched with intention, and allowed ourselves to be vulnerable in ways we hadn't experienced before. Each time we shared an intimate moment, we felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. It was as though we were celebrating the simple but profound truth that despite the physical changes and the passage of time, we still had the capacity to love each other deeply. Our bodies had aged. Yes. But the essence of who we were, both as individuals and as a couple, had only grown stronger. There was no longer any urgency. No need to rush toward a specific outcome. Instead, we could simply be present, fully attuned to each other's touch, breath, and presence. And that alone brought us an indescribable sense of fulfillment. One of the greatest gifts that emerged from these changes was the ability to be truly vulnerable with one another. Vulnerability hadn't always come easily to us, especially not to Jack, who had long felt the need to embody strength and stoicism. But as we entered this new chapter of our lives, we found ourselves opening up to each other in ways we never had before. We talked about things that had once been left unspoken, our fears, our insecurities, and emotions that we had both kept hidden for so long. Jack shared with me how difficult it had been for him to come to terms with the changes in his body. He admitted that he had struggled with feelings of inadequacy and shame, as though the decline in his sexual performance somehow made him less of a man. He confessed that for a while, he had feared I would see him differently, that I might love him less because of the physical changes he was experiencing. Hearing him express these fears made my heart ache. But it also filled me with love for him. Then, Jack said something that made my heart swell with affection. He told me that through our relationship, he had come to realize his worth didn't depend on those things. He had learned that true masculinity wasn't about meeting society's standards of virility. Instead, it was about being a loving, caring partner. It was about how he treated me, how he made me feel safe, and the depth of the connection we shared. In turn, I shared my own feelings with Jack. I was honest, telling him that while the physical changes had initially surprised me, they had never made me love him any less. If anything, they had deepened my feelings for him. I found myself even more drawn to the man he had become, someone who was willing to confront his vulnerabilities and embrace this new stage of life with courage and grace. Our bond, which had always been strong, became even more profound, not just because of the physical closeness we continued to share, but because of the emotional and spiritual connection that had grown between us. We had learned, through this journey, to navigate these changes together, hand in hand, with patience and compassion. Instead of focusing on what had been lost, we chose to focus on what we had gained, a deeper understanding of each other, an unshakable trust, and a renewed sense of love that was richer than anything we had ever known in our younger years. Together, we had grown stronger as a couple. And I took a moment to tell Jack how much I valued his vulnerability, how deeply it meant to me that he trusted me enough to share his most private insecurities. What we both came to realize was that communication lay at the heart of everything, not just in the bedroom, but in every aspect of our relationship. We learned to speak openly about what we needed from each other, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally as well. Gone were the days when we assumed the other person could read our mind or instinctively know what we were feeling. Instead, we made a conscious effort to listen closely, to communicate honestly, and to be fully present for one another. This renewed sense of open dialogue reignited a spark between us in ways we hadn't anticipated. Despite the evolving nature of the physical side of our relationship, our emotional connection stayed alive and vibrant. With every conversation and every shared moment of intimacy, we built something stronger, more resilient than ever before. We discovered that love wasn't about clinging to an illusion of youth or trying to meet some unattainable standard of perfection. It was about being there for each other, every single day. In every possible way. It was about loving each other fully. Not just for our physical selves, but for our hearts, minds, and souls. Now, looking back on the years we've shared, I understand that the challenges we faced were, in many ways, a gift. They forced us to confront the hidden parts of ourselves, the fears we didn't even realize we carried, and, in doing so, brought us closer together. We learned that true intimacy doesn't fade with time, it deepens. It grows stronger, more meaningful, and infinitely more profound as life goes on. Though our bodies may have changed, our love has remained just as fierce and beautiful as it ever was. And for that, I am profoundly grateful. As time passed and life took its inevitable course, Jack and I found ourselves navigating the physical changes that come with aging. At first, these changes were subtle, almost imperceptible. But gradually, they became undeniable. I watched as Jack, once a man of unwavering confidence, wrestled with the frustration of no longer being able to perform in the same way he once did. His body, which had always seemed strong and reliable, now bore the marks of time. And it began to take a toll on his self-assurance. Jack had always carried himself with a quiet kind of pride, an air of strength that made him the foundation of our family. But as his body changed, I could see how deeply it affected him. The societal expectation that men must remain vigorous, strong, and sexually capable, even well into old age, became a silent weight he bore on his shoulders. For a long time, he struggled with this burden in silence, feeling the pressure to uphold an image of masculinity that had been ingrained in him since he was young. At first, Jack didn't speak about what he was going through, but I could sense it. His frustration began to surface in subtle ways, small irritations over trivial matters. A growing quietness whenever the topic of intimacy came up. I knew he was grappling with a fear that his worth, his very identity as a man, was somehow tied to his physical capabilities. He feared that the changes in his body meant he was losing a vital part of himself. Watching him carry this invisible burden, knowing how false these fears were, broke my heart. One quiet evening, after we had finished a simple dinner, I decided it was time to talk. We sat together on the couch, the room bathed in the soft glow of the evening light. I reached for Jack's hand and told him gently, "I've noticed how you've been feeling, and I want you to know it's okay to talk about it." At first, he resisted, brushing off my concern with a half-hearted smile. But I pressed on, gently but firmly, reminding him that we had always faced life's challenges together, and this should be no different. Slowly, Jack began to open up. He admitted that the changes in his body had made him feel less like himself, less like the man he had always been. He confessed that he felt as though he was losing a part of his identity, a part that had always been tied to his sense of masculinity. Hearing him express these fears was both heartbreaking and illuminating. It allowed me to understand just how much pressure he had been placing on himself, trying to meet a standard that was neither fair nor realistic. Jack confided that he felt like he was losing a part of himself, a part that had always been so closely tied to his sense of masculinity. If you're still watching this video and find these insights helpful, please comment 3 below to let me know you're still here with me. We sat together for a long time, just talking. And in that quiet moment, something shifted between us. I reassured Jack that his worth had never been tied to his physical capabilities. What mattered to me wasn't the strength of his body or his appearance, but the man he was, the kindness he consistently showed, the love he gave so freely, and the steadfast way he had always been there for me and for our family. I told him that the changes in his body didn't alter the way I saw him or diminish how much I loved him. I loved him for the depth of his character, not for his physical performance. That conversation became a pivotal moment for us. And from that point forward, our relationship began to evolve in ways we hadn't foreseen. We came to the shared realization that intimacy, at its essence, was about far more than just physical connection. It was about the emotional bond we had built over the decades, the trust and understanding that had grown stronger with every challenge we faced together, and the enduring love that had weathered all the ups and downs of life. We shifted our focus from the purely physical side of intimacy to nurturing the emotional and spiritual connection that had always been present but often overlooked. With renewed intention, we paid greater attention to each other's emotional needs, making room for vulnerability in ways we hadn't before. We realized that sex wasn't merely about the physical act, it was an extension of the emotional intimacy we shared. And when that emotional bond was strong, the physical closeness we experienced became all the more meaningful. As Jack gradually worked through his insecurities and began to accept the changes in his body, something remarkable happened. He started to take better care of himself, not because he was trying to recapture some lost sense of youth, but because he genuinely wanted to feel comfortable and confident in his own skin again. He began focusing on his overall well-being, eating healthier, staying active in ways that suited his body, and practicing mindfulness to manage stress. He let go of the pressure to meet societal expectations of masculinity, particularly when it came to sexual performance, and instead embraced a more holistic approach to his health and happiness. This shift in mindset brought about positive changes we hadn't anticipated. Ironically, as Jack let go of the pressure to perform and stopped striving to meet unrealistic standards, his confidence grew, and our intimate life improved in ways neither of us had expected. The stress and anxiety that had once weighed heavily on him began to fade. And with that, the tension that had quietly built up between us also dissipated. He became more relaxed, more present, and more capable of truly enjoying our moments of closeness without the constant pressure to meet certain expectations. It was as though, by accepting his body as it was, Jack freed himself to experience pleasure in a more genuine and fulfilling way. Of course, the transformation wasn't immediate. There were still occasional moments when frustration or doubt crept in, moments when Jack's old insecurities resurfaced, and he felt the familiar weight of societal pressure pressing down on him. But with time, those moments grew fewer and farther between. Together, we continued to work on our relationship, both individually and as a couple, learning to navigate the inevitable changes that aging brought with patience, compassion, and understanding. One of the most valuable lessons we learned during this period was the immense power of communication. Though we had always made an effort to talk openly, we now began to communicate on a much deeper, more meaningful level. We no longer confined our discussions to surface-level topics but instead delved into our emotions, our fears, and our insecurities. Jack expressed how much it meant to him to feel truly seen and understood. He told me that knowing I didn't judge him for the changes in his body had lifted a tremendous burden from his heart. In turn, I shared how much I valued his honesty, how his willingness to be vulnerable had only strengthened my love for him. Through these heartfelt conversations, we discovered that intimacy wasn't just something that happened behind closed doors, it was woven into the fabric of our everyday lives. We realized that intimacy was present in the little moments, the way we listened to each other, the way we showed up for each other, and the way we continued to choose love, even when life presented new and unexpected challenges. This emotional intimacy not only deepened our bond but also enriched the physical connection we shared. It reminded us that real love and real intimacy aren't defined by fleeting physical perfection but by the enduring commitment to grow, adapt, and support one another through every stage of life. Our connection deepened in ways we hadn't expected. When intimacy did occur, it became more meaningful and fulfilling than it ever had been in our younger years. There was no rush, no pressure, only a profound sense of closeness and love. We learned to cherish the moments of physical connection in a natural, unhurried way, free from the societal expectations that once loomed over us. As I reflect on those years, I realize that our journey, navigating aging, physical changes, insecurities, and moments of doubt, was one of the most significant experiences of our lives. It taught us that genuine intimacy isn't rooted in physical perfection but in emotional connection. It's about being present for each other through the highs and lows, through life's inevitable changes and challenges, and knowing that love can endure it all. In the end, the emotional intimacy we built became the cornerstone of our relationship, a bond that grew stronger with time, filled with abiding love and resilience. That, above all else, is what I am most thankful for. As the physical changes in our bodies became more noticeable, James and I found ourselves entering a new chapter in our relationship, one we hadn't entirely anticipated but chose to embrace. It was a period of transition, and with it came both challenges and unexpected discoveries. One of the most surprising and powerful tools we uncovered during this time was humor. We discovered that learning to laugh together was one of the best ways to navigate the awkward moments that aging often brought. There were nights when things didn't go as planned, times when our bodies didn't respond the way they once had. Initially, we responded with nervous laughter, born out of the discomfort of unmet expectations. But gradually, that laughter evolved into something joyous and freeing, a shared release of any tension or pressure we had felt. We realized that intimacy wasn't about striving for perfection or getting things right every time. Instead, it was about being present in the moment, sharing something uniquely ours, even if it didn't turn out as we had imagined. Laughter turned what could have been embarrassing moments into cherished memories. We began to see the beauty in imperfections. Life, after all, is full of them. And it's those imperfections that make it beautiful. Letting go of rigid expectations, especially when it came to intimacy, was incredibly liberating. There's a lightness that comes with not taking everything so seriously, with simply enjoying the connection we had. As we adopted this more relaxed attitude toward intimacy, something shifted. We began to understand that our physical relationship was transforming into something much more profound than just sex. It became about connection, presence, and expressing love through the smallest gestures. We started to truly appreciate the quiet moments of intimacy that we might have overlooked before. A soft touch on the arm, a lingering glance, or a heartfelt conversation became just as meaningful, if not more so, than any physical act. It wasn't about achieving a goal, it was about being with each other fully, embracing each moment without expectation or pressure. It was never about reaching a specific goal, like climax or physical performance. but about simply being together in a shared space of love and mutual understanding. We began to realize that genuine pleasure didn't solely come from what happened in the bedroom. Instead, it was the emotional connection that gave those moments their true meaning. As time went on, the physical aspect of our relationship became less central, while the emotional and spiritual bond between us grew stronger and became the driving force behind our intimacy. As we continued to age, our evolving sexual relationship mirrored the other changes happening in our lives. Together, we were learning that life is about adapting, finding new ways to connect, and discovering deeper forms of love. The changes that came with aging, including the transformation in Jacob's body, were not things to fear. Instead, we chose to embrace them with patience, love, and mutual acceptance. We were both changing, and by facing those changes with open hearts, we saw them as opportunities for growth rather than obstacles to overcome. Of course, this process wasn't without its challenges. There were still days when frustration would creep in, when Jacob felt weighed down by societal expectations of what it means to be a man. The world often teaches men that their worth is tied to their physical strength, sexual prowess, and virility. These messages, ingrained over a lifetime, didn't simply disappear. Even as we worked through these changes together, those old beliefs occasionally resurfaced, triggering moments of insecurity and doubt. Yet, with every difficult moment came an opportunity to communicate more openly, to share our fears, and to remind each other that our love was never dependent on physical performance. I vividly recall one particularly tough day when Jacob opened up to me about how he was feeling. He admitted that he felt like he was failing, that his body wasn't what it used to be, and he feared he was letting me down, even though I had never given him a reason to feel that way. Hearing him express those feelings broke my heart. It was painful to see how much pressure he was putting on himself, how deeply he had internalized society's narrow definition of masculinity. But it was also a moment of profound vulnerability, one that ultimately brought us closer. We talked openly about what masculinity really means. It isn't about the size of a man's body or his ability to perform in any particular way. True masculinity is found in how a man loves, how he cares, how he supports his partner, and how he treats others with kindness and respect. That conversation became a turning point in our relationship. It gave us the space to redefine what intimacy meant to us. We began to focus even more on emotional closeness, nurturing our connection in ways that extended far beyond the physical. We made a conscious effort to express affection more frequently in our daily lives, not just during moments of physical intimacy. Small gestures, like holding hands as we walked, leaving thoughtful notes for each other, or setting aside time to chat over coffee, became the fabric of our relationship. These simple acts of love and attention built a foundation that made our intimate moments feel even more special. What surprised us both was that, as we continued to prioritize emotional connection, our physical relationship began to improve in ways we hadn't expected. Without the pressure to meet rigid expectations, Jacob felt more at ease. The stress that had previously weighed on him started to lift. And with it, the tension that sometimes crept into our intimate moments vanished. He became more relaxed, more present, and better able to enjoy those moments without the fear of whether his body would respond in a particular way. Ironically, as Jacob let go of those pressures, his body began to respond more naturally. By freeing ourselves from the burden of expectations, we opened the door to a kind of pleasure that wasn't based on physicality alone, but on emotional closeness. This shift allowed us to experience intimacy in a deeper, more fulfilling way than we ever had before. An important part of this journey was learning to embrace the imperfections of aging. We came to understand that true intimacy is about being fully present for each other. Not about meeting an idealized standard. It's about showing love in small, everyday ways. Staying connected emotionally. And finding joy in simply being together. This journey taught us to accept the changes in our bodies with grace. Instead of viewing aging as something to fight, we began seeing it as a natural and inevitable part of life. Caleb started taking better care of himself, not because he was chasing some lost sense of youth, but because he wanted to feel comfortable and healthy in his own skin. He shifted his focus to maintaining his overall well-being. Eating balanced meals. Staying active in ways that suited his changing body. And adopting relaxation techniques to manage stress. These changes not only improved his physical health but also had a noticeable effect on his emotional and mental state, which in turn strengthened our relationship. It's important to acknowledge that this transformation didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual process. One that required patience, understanding, and mutual support. There were moments when old insecurities would resurface. Times when self-doubt threatened to undo the progress we had made. But we faced those moments together, never allowing silence to creep between us. We kept the lines of communication open, always sharing how we felt and what we needed from one another. More importantly, we learned to show ourselves kindness, to understand that this was a journey, not a destination with a fixed endpoint. Now, looking back, I feel a profound sense of gratitude for everything we've been through. There's a unique beauty in mature love, a love that has endured the storms of life, adapted to change, and grown stronger with each passing year. The fiery passion of youth has its place. But the steady, enduring love that comes with age offers something even more rewarding. It's a love built on trust, mutual respect, and the shared history of two lives intertwined. It's about knowing that you've created something far more valuable than fleeting physical pleasures, a partnership that stands the test of time. For any man or couple going through the changes that aging brings, my message is simple: embrace the journey. Don't shy away from talking about your experiences, your fears, or your insecurities. Aging is a natural process. And with the right mindset, every stage of life can be just as meaningful and fulfilling as the one before. The size of the penis, the firmness of erections, these are just small details in the grander picture. True masculinity, genuine connection, and lasting love come not from physical prowess but from how you treat each other, how you show up for each other, and how you continue to grow together. As Caleb and I continue to age, we're still learning, still loving, and still finding new ways to stay connected. And to me, that's the greatest gift of all. Aging hasn't diminished our relationship, if anything. It has given us more than we ever imagined. It has taught us that love in all its forms only deepens over time and that true intimacy doesn't come from physical perfection but from the heart. As we grew older together, we reached a critical juncture in our relationship, a point where the inevitable changes in our bodies, especially Caleb's, forced us to redefine what intimacy meant to us. It was no longer about the spontaneous passion of youth, where physical connection came effortlessly. Instead, it became something deeper, something more profound. The more we leaned into these changes, embracing them instead of resisting, the more we discovered that real intimacy wasn't tied to physical performance or youthful energy. It was something far more meaningful. A closeness born of years of shared experiences and emotional openness. This wasn't an easy journey. I watched Caleb struggle inwardly with the changes he was experiencing. The signs of aging, particularly those affecting his sexual health, seemed to carry an emotional weight beyond the physical. It wasn't just the loss of certain physical functions, it was what those changes symbolized. Society's narrative that equates a man's worth with his physical capabilities had left its mark on Caleb, even if he wasn't fully aware of it. For so long, he had tied his sense of masculinity to his strength, virility, and sexual performance. So, when those things began to shift, it shook his identity in ways neither of us anticipated. At first, Caleb tried to ignore what was happening, hoping that by not acknowledging it, the problem would somehow resolve itself. He didn't want to talk about it. I could sense that he feared opening up would make the situation feel more real, more permanent. But ignoring the issue didn't make it go away. I saw the quiet frustration in his eyes, the way he withdrew emotionally, and the subtle distance that began to grow between us. It hurt to see him carrying this burden alone, knowing how much pressure he was placing on himself to live up to an unrealistic ideal. One evening, after dinner, I decided it was time to address what had been left unsaid for too long. I reached for his hand, gently encouraging him to open up. At first, he resisted, offering a forced smile as if to downplay his feelings. But I didn't let go. I reminded him that we had faced so much together over the years, and this was no different. Slowly, Caleb began to open up, sharing his fears and frustrations. He admitted that he felt as though he was losing a part of himself, a part he had always associated with his identity as a man. Between us, I understood this wasn't just a physical issue, it ran far deeper. Oliver was grappling with feelings of inadequacy, wondering if I still found him attractive, questioning whether he was still enough. The silence that had grown between us only amplified those insecurities. One evening, after an unusually quiet dinner, I decided it was time to talk. Sitting beside him, I took his hand and gently said that I had noticed the weight he'd been carrying alone. I assured him that he didn't have to go through this by himself, that I was here, that I loved him, and nothing about the changes in his body could alter that. At first, his instinct was to dismiss my concern, to act as if it wasn't a big deal. But as we continued talking, I saw the cracks in his facade begin to show. He opened up, admitting that he felt as though he was losing an essential part of who he was. He worried he was no longer the man he used to be. And even more, he feared that I might see him differently. In that moment, something shifted. We both realized that the real struggle wasn't about the physical changes, it was about the emotional toll those changes were taking on him. And on us. Our relationship had always been built on more than just physical attraction or sexual connection. But now, these changes forced us to confront a truth we'd always known deep down: intimacy is so much more than the act of sex. It's about emotional closeness, vulnerability, and being truly seen and loved for who you are, not for what your body can do. The more we talked, the more we understood that, difficult as these changes were, they presented an opportunity for us to grow even closer. This was our chance to redefine what intimacy meant for us, to discover new ways of connecting that weren't tied to physical performance. We began to find joy and fulfillment in life's simple moments: a gentle touch, holding hands while watching the sunset, a long conversation over morning coffee. These gestures, though small, took on new significance. They became acts of love that reinforced the strong bond we had built over decades. It was a different kind of intimacy. One that wasn't about reaching a climax, but about being fully present with each other in ways that were deeply meaningful. As we embraced this new phase in our relationship, I noticed a change in Oliver, not just physically, but emotionally. He started to let go of the heavy societal expectations that had burdened him for so long. He began to understand that his worth as a man didn't depend on his ability to perform sexually. Instead, it was defined by how he showed up in our relationship, how he supported our family, and how he lived his life with integrity and kindness. He started to see that true masculinity wasn't about physical strength or virility, it was about compassion, emotional openness, and the capacity to love deeply. If you're still watching this video and these lessons resonate with you, please comment number 4 below so I know you're still with me on this journey. This realization was freeing for Oliver. He began taking better care of himself. Not to turn back time or regain a sense of youth, but because he wanted to feel good in the body he had now. He focused on overall wellness, eating nutritious meals, exercising in ways that worked for him, and finding time to rest and manage stress. These changes didn't just enhance his physical health, they had a profound impact on his emotional well-being. He became more confident, more at peace with himself, and more open to the emotional intimacy we were rediscovering. Through this process, I found myself growing too. I came to understand that love isn't a static thing, it evolves. Just as we do. The love we shared in our younger years had been filled with passion and excitement. But the love we were discovering in this later stage of life was something entirely different, something deeper. It was a love that had endured the trials of time. One that had been tested by challenges and come out stronger on the other side. As we leaned into this evolving love, we both realized how fortunate we were. Not everyone has the chance to grow old with the person they love, to navigate life's changes hand in hand. And while aging brought its own set of challenges, it also brought a profound sense of gratitude. It allowed us to see that real intimacy isn't about perfection or performance, it's about connection, trust, and the unwavering support you give one another through all life stages. By embracing this new chapter, we learned that love, in its truest form, only grows deeper over time. And for that, we were profoundly grateful. We experienced a love that had weathered life's challenges and emerged stronger, more enduring. There was something undeniably beautiful about the quiet moments we now cherished, the way we communicated more openly, the way we showed up for each other not out of duty, but from genuine affection and care. As Daniel's relationship with his own body evolved, so too did our relationship as a couple. The pressure to conform to societal expectations around sex and performance gradually faded. What remained was something far more meaningful, an emotional intimacy that had always been present but hadn't fully blossomed until now. The more we focused on being emotionally present for one another, the more fulfilling our physical connection became. Even if it no longer resembled what it had been in our youth. We found ourselves laughing at the moments when things didn't go as planned. There were instances when, despite our best efforts, physical intimacy didn't unfold the way we had hoped. But instead of feeling frustrated or embarrassed, we laughed. That laughter became a balm. A way to ease any lingering tension and remind ourselves that life is filled with imperfections, and that's perfectly okay. Those moments of humor, shared vulnerability, and light-hearted acceptance brought us closer than we had ever been before. Of course, the journey wasn't without its setbacks. There were days when Daniel struggled with old insecurities. Days when the fear of not being enough resurfaced. On those days, I could see the doubt creeping into his expression. But we faced those moments together. We reminded each other of the strength of our bond, of the enduring love that had carried us through countless other trials. Each time we navigated these difficult moments, we emerged more connected, more attuned to each other's needs, and more appreciative of the partnership we had built. Looking back, I realized that this journey, this process of aging, confronting changes, and redefining intimacy, was one of the most profound experiences of our lives. It taught us something invaluable, that real love isn't about physical perfection or striving to meet some arbitrary standard. Real love is about standing by each other, through every high and every low, through every change and challenge. It's about knowing that your partner loves you not in spite of those changes, but because of them. To anyone who may be walking a similar path, my advice is simple: embrace the journey. Don't shy away from discussing the changes you're going through. Be vulnerable with each other. And most importantly, let go of the societal expectations that often weigh us down. Aging is a natural part of life. And with it comes a unique opportunity, an opportunity to deepen your connection. Rediscover intimacy in new and meaningful ways. And grow together in ways you may never have imagined. In the end, what Daniel and I discovered is that true intimacy, the kind that endures, the kind that sustains you through the years, isn't rooted in physicality. It's found in emotional closeness, trust, and the love you've nurtured over a lifetime. And for me, that realization is the most beautiful part of growing old together. As Daniel and I continued to navigate the journey of aging side by side, we found ourselves on a path that, while unexpected, was deeply rewarding. It was a road we hadn't anticipated, one filled with quiet revelations, subtle discoveries, and a newfound understanding of what intimacy truly meant. Over time, we came to realize that while the physical aspect of our relationship had evolved, the emotional and spiritual dimensions had only grown richer. Intimacy had shifted from the fiery passion of youth to something far more profound, a connection rooted in love, mutual respect, and the shared history we had built together. In our early years, like many young couples, we placed great importance on the physical side of our relationship. Sex was frequent and spontaneous, filled with passion and excitement. It felt thrilling to be young, to be swept away by physical desire, and to lose ourselves in each other's arms. Back then, it seemed as though the physical connection was the very foundation of our relationship. But as time went on, as our bodies changed and life threw its inevitable challenges our way, we began to see things differently. We realized that the physical side of intimacy, while important, was only a small part of something much greater. The years brought with them undeniable changes. Daniel's once strong body, which had carried him effortlessly through the demands of life, began to slow down. There were moments of frustration when he felt that his body had let him down, moments when he struggled to come to terms with those changes. For a man who had always carried himself with quiet confidence, confronting the reality of an aging body wasn't easy. At first, he tried to hide those feelings from me, as though ignoring them might make them disappear. But I saw through his silence. I noticed the way he withdrew emotionally, and I could feel the growing distance between us. It wasn't about the physical changes alone, it was about what those changes represented. He feared losing a part of his identity, the part he had long associated with his sense of masculinity. Adjusting to the changes in his body wasn't easy. I could see it in Liam's eyes, the way he would sometimes shy away from intimacy, as if fearing he was no longer enough. It was a difficult transition for both of us. But through patience, open conversations, and moments of shared vulnerability, We discovered something profound: the essence of intimacy wasn't solely tied to our physical selves. In fact, as the physical aspects of our relationship evolved, we found ourselves drawn closer in ways we hadn't anticipated. Intimacy became less about the act of sex and more about the quiet, everyday moments of connection that surrounded us. We began to see intimacy in the simplest acts: the way we supported each other during difficult days, the way we allowed space for one another's feelings, and the way we communicated without words through a gentle touch or a glance. For us, aging became an opportunity to awaken to the small joys we had once overlooked or taken for granted. We realized that true intimacy didn't require grand gestures or youthful vigor; it was present in the quiet, ordinary moments of life. A brush of hands as we passed each other in the hallway, sitting together in silence on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon, or sharing quiet conversations late at night when the world was asleep. These seemingly simple moments became some of the most intimate and meaningful experiences we shared. They reminded us that real intimacy is not about physical performance or appearances; it's about being truly present for one another. About creating a space where we could both be vulnerable, honest, and deeply connected. As we moved through this new chapter in our lives, we began to explore subtler, gentler expressions of affection, the kind that didn't demand the physical energy of youth but carried immense emotional significance. A hand resting on my back as we prepared dinner, a lingering hug before bed, or the way Liam would reach for my hand as we walked side by side. All of these small, quiet gestures became powerful expressions of a love that had grown richer and more profound over the years. We came to understand that intimacy didn't need to be loud or intense. It could be soft, steady, and graceful. In fact, it was in those quieter moments that we often felt most connected. One of the most important lessons we learned was that intimacy is not what society often portrays it to be. Society places so much emphasis on youth, physical beauty, strength, and sexual prowess that it can leave people feeling as though they've lost something vital as they grow older. Liam, like many men, struggled with these societal expectations. He felt the weight of the pressure to remain physically strong and sexually capable, even as his body naturally changed. There were moments when I could see that these pressures made him feel inadequate, as if he were somehow falling short because he could no longer meet the physical standards he had held himself to in his younger years. But as we continued to talk openly about what we were experiencing, something shifted. We realized that the expectations we had placed on ourselves were unnecessary. Our relationship was never defined by physicality; it was built on the depth of our love, our shared history, and the unwavering support we gave each other. Gradually, Liam began to let go of the need to prove anything, to me, to himself, or to the world. He started to embrace who he was in the present, rather than longing for who he had once been. In doing so, he found a new kind of peace, a quiet, unshakable confidence that wasn't rooted in physical prowess, but in emotional strength and his capacity to love deeply. It was this transformation, this newfound acceptance, that allowed us to continue growing together in ways we had never imagined. Loving deeply brought a newfound sense of freedom to our relationship, without the constant pressure of living up to societal expectations. We found ourselves exploring intimacy in a way that felt more authentic, more true to who we had become. We began to appreciate the beauty in the small moments of connection, the way we cared for each other in quiet ways, the laughter that echoed through our home, and the unspoken understanding we leaned on in difficult times. The need to chase after the physical intensity of our youth faded away, replaced by something far more enduring and sustaining. That isn't to say physical intimacy disappeared from our relationship; it simply evolved. We discovered joy in the subtler expressions of love. In the quiet moments of physical closeness that didn't demand the same energy but carried a deeper emotional resonance. We also learned to be gentle with ourselves when things didn't go as planned. There were nights when our bodies didn't cooperate. When the desire for intimacy was present. But the physical reality didn't align. Instead of letting frustration take hold, we turned to something far more powerful: laughter. We laughed at the imperfections of aging. At the way our bodies seemed to develop their own agendas. And in those moments of shared humor, we found relief. Laughter became our way of navigating the complexities of growing older. It reminded us that life doesn't need to be perfect to be beautiful. And that intimacy isn't about flawless execution but about shared moments of connection. No matter how imperfect. Reflecting on these years fills me with gratitude. Our journey hasn't always been easy. But it has been filled with growth, discovery, and an ever-deepening love. The fiery passion of our youth may have waned. But what replaced it was something more profound, a love that continues to grow. Even as time leaves its marks on our bodies. It's a love that has weathered life's inevitable storms. Tested by the years. And come out stronger on the other side. I've come to realize that intimacy is not something that fades with age. Instead, it's something that transforms. Evolving into a richer, more meaningful connection as we move through life together. Each phase of life offers new opportunities to grow, to connect, and to deepen our bond. The physical changes that come with aging are just one chapter of our story. But they don't define the narrative. What truly defines our relationship is the love we share. The way we continue to show up for one another. And the way we've learned to adapt and grow. Hand in hand. For anyone facing the inevitable changes that aging brings. My message is simple: embrace the journey. Don't let societal expectations or fears of physical decline prevent you from experiencing the full depth of intimacy. True connection isn't rooted in physical perfection but in the emotional closeness you cultivate with your partner. As you grow older, you'll find that the love you've built over time becomes your greatest source of strength and your most cherished treasure. Aging together has been one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. It has taught me that love isn't about remaining the same, it's about growing together. About finding new ways to express affection. And about choosing each other every single day through every phase of life. To me, that's the true essence of intimacy, not a static state. But a dynamic, ever-evolving journey that deepens with time. As Liam and I continued to grow older, we found ourselves embarking on a transformation we hadn't anticipated. It was a journey that forced us to reevaluate how we saw not only ourselves but also each other. Aging, with all its inherent challenges and changes, gave us the chance to rediscover intimacy and pleasure in ways that were no longer confined by the narrow definitions we had held in our youth. It became an exploration of love that transcended the physical, moving into emotional and even spiritual realms. In our younger years, like many couples, we were caught up in the excitement of physical intimacy. It was fiery, spontaneous, and brimming with the energy that comes naturally with youth. At the time, it felt as though physical connection was the very foundation of our love, a tangible expression of our desire, affection, and commitment. Back then, sex was the primary language of intimacy. A way we measured the strength of our relationship and our passion for one another. But as time passed, and as our bodies inevitably began to change, we were presented with a new reality. The physical intensity we once took for granted began to shift. And we realized that intimacy had to mean something more if it was to endure. We were no longer the same people we had been in our 20s. And that was okay. What mattered was that our love continued to grow, adapting to the new rhythm of our lives and taking on a depth we had never imagined possible. Our understanding of intimacy had to evolve, or we risked losing the profound connection that had always been the heart of our relationship. For Oliver, the changes were harder to accept at first. Like many men, he had grown up internalizing the belief that his worth was tied to his physical strength, his virility, and his ability to perform sexually. As those abilities began to wane, he struggled with feelings of inadequacy. There were moments when he became distant, retreating into himself, unsure of how he fit into this new stage of our relationship. It broke my heart to see him weighed down by the burden of outdated ideals, expectations that held no bearing on the love and respect I had for him. But as we faced these changes together, something remarkable happened. We discovered that by letting go of the old expectations we had once placed on ourselves and each other, we were creating space for a different kind of intimacy. This new intimacy was built on emotional vulnerability, mutual understanding, and the quiet joys that come from a lifetime of shared experiences. The pleasure we had once sought solely through physical fulfillment began to take new forms. Simple moments, sitting quietly together, holding hands, or sharing a light-hearted laugh, became just as meaningful as anything that had once happened in the bedroom. This realization was incredibly freeing. It felt as though a heavy burden had been lifted from both of us. As though we no longer needed to conform to an arbitrary standard of what intimacy should look like. We learned that true intimacy wasn't about achieving climaxes or proving ourselves through physical acts. Instead, it was about being fully present with each other. About feeling seen, understood, and accepted for who we were, imperfections and all. The physical changes that come with aging were no longer something to be feared, they were simply part of our shared journey. In fact, as our bodies aged, we found that our emotional and spiritual connection only grew stronger. We began to appreciate the subtleties of affection in ways we had once overlooked. The quiet moments of companionship, the shared glances that conveyed unspoken understanding, and the gentle touches that carried the weight of years of love, these became the truest markers of our intimacy. These moments served as constant reminders of the life we had built together, the countless memories we had created, and the deep, unshakable bond that had carried us through life's inevitable ups and downs. As we embraced this new dimension of our relationship, we realized that the pressures of youth, the pressure to perform, to be physically perfect, to meet some external ideal, no longer mattered. We didn't need to prove anything to each other anymore. We had already proven the most important truth, that our love was resilient enough to endure, to grow, and to evolve with time. While the physical aspect of our relationship remained, it no longer dominated our intimacy. Instead, it became a complement to something far more meaningful, the emotional and spiritual connection that had deepened over the years. We also became more attuned to each other's needs. Aging brought with it a kind of wisdom, a gentle patience that we hadn't fully understood in our younger years. We grew more compassionate, both toward ourselves and each other. We learned to listen more deeply, to offer comfort in ways that didn't always require words. There was a tenderness in the way we approached intimacy, a tenderness born from decades of knowing each other's hearts. This tenderness, shaped by years of shared experiences and challenges, created a new kind of pleasure, one that was different from the intense physical pleasure we had chased in our youth. It was softer, gentler, and far more enduring. It didn't demand energy or urgency, instead, it thrived on presence, trust, and quiet connection. We discovered that intimacy could be found in the smallest moments. In the way we reached for each other's hands without thinking. in the way we smiled at one another across a room, or in the comfort of simply being together at the end of a long day. Through these moments, we found a deeper joy, one that wasn't tied to physicality alone but was rooted in the emotional closeness we had cultivated over time. Our love, tested by the years and strengthened by life's trials, had transformed into something more profound than either of us had ever imagined. This, we realized, was the true essence of intimacy, a quiet, enduring connection that transcends the physical, carrying us forward, hand in hand, into whatever the future holds. It was the pleasure of simply being together, of knowing that we were loved and accepted, not despite the changes we had experienced, but because of them. The physical intimacy we shared, though less frequent, was imbued with a depth that we had never encountered before. It was no longer about reaching a specific goal but about savoring the journey itself, the connection that had grown richer and deeper over the years. As we embraced these changes, we also came to understand that intimacy could be found in the smallest moments. It was present in the way we cared for each other when one of us wasn't feeling well, in the way we laughed at life's little quirks, and in the way we could sit together in comfortable silence without needing to fill the air with words. These quiet moments of companionship became the foundation of our relationship. They served as a constant reminder that intimacy isn't confined to what happens in the bedroom. Instead, it weaves itself into the fabric of our daily lives. Whether it was through shared meals, long walks, or simply being present for each other, intimacy became something much more profound, an ever-present connection that extended beyond the physical. If you're still watching this video and find these reflections valuable, please comment number 5 below to let me know you're still with me on this journey. Looking back, I realize that the changes aging brought into our lives were not something to be feared. Rather, they were something to be embraced, an invitation to explore new ways of being, of loving, and of connecting with each other. These changes reminded us that intimacy is not about physical performance or meeting societal standards of beauty and vitality. Instead, it's about the connection we nurture over time. A connection built on trust, shared experiences, and the deep emotional understanding that grows when two people walk through life hand in hand. To anyone navigating the changes that come with aging, my message is simple: don't be afraid to let go of outdated definitions of intimacy and pleasure. Don't let societal pressures to remain youthful or physically perfect rob you of the chance to experience a deeper, more fulfilling kind of connection. Aging isn't the end of intimacy, it's a new beginning. It offers the opportunity to rediscover each other in ways that go far beyond the physical, to cultivate a kind of closeness that transcends time and surface-level attraction. True intimacy, I've learned, is about being fully present with your partner. It's about sharing your vulnerabilities, trusting each other on a level that goes beyond appearances, and finding comfort in the knowledge that you are deeply loved for who you are, not for how you look or what you can do. As we continue to age, my husband and I are still learning, still growing, and still discovering new ways to express our love. The pleasure we once sought solely through physical acts has evolved into a pleasure rooted in companionship, emotional closeness, and the simple joy of being together. That, I believe, is the greatest gift of all. While aging may bring undeniable changes to the body, it also brings with it an unparalleled opportunity to experience intimacy in ways that are richer, more profound, and more enduring than anything we knew in our youth. It's a journey worth embracing, a journey that teaches us that love is not bound by time or by the physical limitations that come with age. Instead, it grows deeper with every passing year, offering new opportunities to connect, support, and cherish one another. As the years unfolded and my husband and I grew older together, we found ourselves on a path we had never anticipated. It was a path that transformed our understanding of love, intimacy, and connection. At first, it was disorienting. The physical vibrancy that had once defined our relationship began to fade, replaced by the inevitable realities of aging. What we had once taken for granted, the spontaneity and energy of physical intimacy, began to change, forcing us to confront what it truly meant to be close to one another. We both experienced the inevitable changes that aging brings. But instead of letting those changes create distance between us, we chose to use them as an opportunity to deepen our bond in ways we hadn't previously imagined. For Oliver, the changes were especially challenging. Like many men, he had grown up in a culture that placed a great deal of importance on physical strength, virility, and the ability to perform sexually. As those physical markers began to fade, he found himself grappling with feelings of inadequacy. There were moments when I could see the struggle in his eyes, moments when he withdrew, weighed down by the pressure of societal ideals that no longer fit our reality. It was difficult to watch him battle these internal doubts, knowing how little they mattered to the love and respect I had for him. But together, through open conversations and mutual reassurance, we began to rewrite those outdated narratives. We found that, far from diminishing our intimacy, aging gave us the chance to cultivate something even more meaningful, a connection grounded in love, trust, and the unspoken understanding that comes from a lifetime shared. As the physical aspects of his identity began to shift, James wrestled with a deep internal struggle, feeling as though he had lost a vital part of himself. There were moments when I noticed him pulling away, unsure of how to voice the feelings of inadequacy that crept in with the passage of time. It wasn't easy for him to confront the changes he was experiencing. Yet, over time, we both came to an unexpected realization: the aging process was offering us a unique opportunity, a chance to redefine what love and intimacy truly meant in our relationship. In our youth, intimacy had often been centered on physical expressions, a touch, a kiss, a passionate moment that made us feel connected. It was easy then to believe that love was primarily communicated through those physical acts. But as we aged, our perspective began to shift. We realized that intimacy ran far deeper than we had once imagined. It became less about fleeting physical moments and more about the emotional closeness we had nurtured over decades of being together. Intimacy began to show itself in the way we supported each other through life's ups and downs, in how we listened without judgment, and in how we remained present for each other during even the most ordinary moments of daily life. The physical changes we were both experiencing didn't diminish our love; instead, they opened new doors to explore different ways of connecting. We found that intimacy could be expressed in countless ways beyond what occurred in the bedroom. A soft hand on the shoulder, a lingering glance from across the room, or the comfort of sitting together in quiet companionship, all of these became powerful expressions of the love we shared. These simple, everyday acts began to define our relationship in a way that grand romantic gestures never could. They reminded us that intimacy was not confined to a single aspect of life but was woven throughout all the moments we spent together. One of the greatest gifts that came with aging was learning to be truly vulnerable with one another. In our younger years, there had been an unspoken expectation to be strong, capable, and always in control. Like many couples, we had felt the need to live up to societal standards of what a relationship should be. But as we grew older, those pressures began to fade. We no longer needed to prove anything, to each other or to the world. Instead, we found the courage to open up about our fears, our insecurities, and our dreams for the future. This newfound vulnerability didn't weaken our relationship, it strengthened it, creating a deeper level of trust and understanding between us. I vividly remember one evening when James shared with me his anxieties about aging. He admitted that he felt as though he was losing a part of himself, that the changes in his body made him feel less like the man he used to be. It was a difficult conversation, filled with raw honesty and emotion. But it was also a pivotal moment for us. In that moment, I reassured him that my love for him had never been tied to his physical abilities. What I valued most about him was not his strength or vitality but the person he had always been, the man who had stood by my side through every twist and turn of life. That conversation marked the beginning of a new chapter in our relationship. From that point on, we began to evolve in ways we hadn't anticipated. We learned that love, at its core, isn't about physical performance or living up to societal expectations. It's about being fully present for one another. About creating a space where both of us could be our authentic selves without fear of judgment. This shift in perspective allowed us to experience intimacy in a way that felt richer and more fulfilling than anything we had known in our younger years. As we let go of the need to meet certain expectations, the pressure that had once weighed us down began to lift. In its place, we discovered a quiet joy, the joy of simply being together. Of knowing that we had built a life filled with love, trust, and mutual respect. We found intimacy in the smallest of moments, sharing a laugh over something trivial, having long conversations about our dreams and reflections, or walking hand in hand through the park, savoring the world around us. These simple moments became the foundation of our relationship, grounding us in the love we had built over a lifetime. Another important lesson we learned was the value of acceptance not only of each other but also of ourselves. We came to understand that aging is a natural part of life, something that happens to everyone. The changes in our bodies were not something to be ashamed of but something to acknowledge with grace and understanding. We learned to see those changes as a reflection of the life we had lived together, a testament to the years we had shared, and the love that had only grown stronger with time. By embracing this perspective, we found that aging was not an end but a new beginning, a chance to deepen our connection, explore new forms of intimacy, and cherish the journey we were on. Together, we discovered that love isn't defined by youth or physicality, it's defined by the way we choose to stand by each other through every stage of life. As we learned to embrace these changes, they became symbols of the life we had lived, the memories we had created, the lessons we had learned, and the love that had grown stronger through the years. Instead of focusing on what was no longer possible, we began to treasure what we had gained, a deeper understanding of each other, a greater appreciation for the present, and a newfound sense of peace. Through this process, we realized something important: pleasure doesn't fade with age, it transforms. In our younger years, pleasure was often tied to physical experiences, the rush of passion, and the intensity of desire. But as we grew older, we found pleasure in different forms. It was in the emotional connection we shared, in the small ways we made each other feel seen and valued. It was in the quiet moments, holding hands during an evening walk, sharing stories over a cup of tea, or simply sitting in silence, knowing we were there for each other no matter what. The intensity of youth faded, but in its place grew a love that was steady, comforting, and profoundly fulfilling. What surprised us most was that as we welcomed these changes, our relationship didn't weaken, it grew stronger. Our bond deepened because it was no longer based on fleeting aspects like physical attraction or sexual performance. Instead, it was built on emotional intimacy, trust, and shared experiences. We came to understand that true intimacy isn't just about what happens physically, it's about how two people see and accept each other. How they choose to love through life's changes. And how they find joy in the simple act of being together. For anyone facing a similar journey, my advice is simple: embrace it. Aging isn't a loss, it's a transformation. It's a chance to rediscover your relationship. To connect in new and meaningful ways. And to nurture a love that goes beyond the physical. Don't let changes in your body define your relationship. Instead, focus on the connection you've built, the love that has grown through time. The trust that has been strengthened by shared experiences. And the joy of being with someone who knows you completely. True intimacy, we discovered, isn't about physical performance, it's about the heart's ability to love deeply. To give. And to receive. And that capacity doesn't diminish with age, it expands. The love you cultivate over a lifetime. The connection you nurture through all of life's changes. Becomes the greatest gift of all. It's a love that transcends physical boundaries. Enriched by time. Patience. And a shared willingness to grow together. That, we believe, is the true essence of intimacy. Life is full of inevitable changes, whether it's aging, shifting relationships, or unexpected challenges. Instead of resisting these changes, try embracing them as opportunities for growth. Often, we feel pressured by societal expectations to maintain a certain image of ourselves, whether that's youth, success, or perfection. But real strength comes from letting go of those pressures and focusing on what truly matters: the connections we build, the love we share, and the ways we support one another. Start by opening up to the people you care about. Vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a pathway to deeper connection. Be willing to have honest conversations about your feelings, your fears, and your dreams. Accept yourself as you are. And give those around you the same grace. Life isn't about reaching an ideal, it's about growing, learning, and finding joy in the present moment. Finally, remember that intimacy, whether emotional or physical, isn't about grand gestures. It's about being present, offering kindness, and creating a safe space for love to flourish. As you navigate life's inevitable changes, approach each phase with patience, an open heart, and a willingness to grow. That's where true fulfillment lies. We've covered a lot of ground today, reflecting on the emotional and physical aspects of intimacy as we grow older. What resonated most with you? Please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found value in this message, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more meaningful insights. Your support helps us continue this journey, and it means more than we can say.